So, you know that stuff that's happening to the Donald right now? Can all be traced back to a glass of milk in 1982. But not just any glass of milk. Oh, no, no. This glass of milk was laced with ketamine. And I'm using green because that's what happens to my sinuses every time these people do that to me. I get a sinus infection. Most sinus infections aren't contagious. They're an infection in your sinus areas around your face, right? I think you got 2 on each side here and 1 or 2 up here. Have to look at an anatomy chart again. But the thing is, when it's in milk or apple juice, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. And I was doing my homework. 1982, beginning of the school year, I was 15 years old. And my mother brought me a glass of milk. She never brings me a glass of milk or a tray of cookies or anything. This woman doesn't do that. And usually we barely have enough groceries to get through the week back then, in the 80s. Man, that took me right back. Do you hear me say that? Usually we have barely enough groceries to get through the week. Usually we had, is what I should have said. Because we're in 2024, right? But I still remember a lot of stuff. I have 5 subject Mead notebooks full of my memories that I have spent the last 6 years while recovering from a work injury writing down. So, story time, and I still have trouble looking at glaring paper and light-emitting screens. I can read better, but I get this double image still, so Dollar Tree glasses trick my eyes that the page is further away. Anyway, I'm going to read this so I don't get going in circles, but as I said, all this stuff happening to Donald John Trump right now can be traced back to that glass of milk I told you, laced with ketamine. And I know it was ketamine because of an episode of Bones that I saw in 2014. 2014. Years and years after I'd already been married and divorced twice and had 4 kids, and one of them was already raised, actually 2. I had 2 more to go. Actually, they were all raised but the one. Because there's 7 years difference between the third one and my youngest, different fathers, right? So, anyway, this milk laced with ketamine, I realized was laced with ketamine in 2014 after watching an episode of Bones where there's this female doctor, not Bones, but one of the people in her crew, that was talking with her assistant about somebody's drink being laced with ketamine. Totally different story, but you know, all those stories on the series Bones are based on true cases worked on at the the Jeffersonian, by this lady whose name I forget. I met her once. Navy Wives Club meeting of some kind. I don't remember what for. And she was sharing some of her cases with us. This was a few years before the show aired, before it even was a show. And, you know, After I saw this episode, that's when I realized, because they discussed that ketamine suspended in any type of drink will leave a coating on the glass that looks like dried egg white. Not the yolk, the egg white. You know how it kind of goes this super pale, translucent yellow and it cracks when it gets left behind and dries on something? That's what made me realize that my room being covered in dust suddenly was due to being gone for 88 days. The 72 school days I was accused of missing by the attendance counselor, who yelled at me until I was crying and had a blotched face and my nose was clogged, because I could not understand why he was accusing me of missing school when I know I hadn't missed school. Right? I thought I never left my bed. And but this glass of milk still sitting on the corner of my cedar chest, with the dried milk turning that translucent yellow and cracking like a desert floor, was how I had been unaware that I had even left my bed. And that when my brothers said that I had been gone a long time, it was a very long time. 3 months. That's not just a couple days sleeping over with your friends or going to girls' camp. Girls' camp was 2 weeks. Anyway, they wouldn't tell me either, and I would like them to tell me what they saw, because that would go with what my classmates and my former friends that were our neighbors, my peers, told me about what they saw that night, and that they said I was lying when I said that it didn't happen. And I really didn't know that it happened. Anyway, and that the seemingly never-ending string of nightmares, including sex acts I didn't really want to participate in, and other very frightening things like being hunted by a guy that likes to hunt humans and surviving that, was in fact not a dream. It wasn't a big, long, never-ending dream where I was cold a lot. Found myself curled up under a bush in the dream, and Epstein, that I didn't know his name back then, reaching down and taking my hand, or being led into a room under the stairs where we were locked in until they needed us, because I kept wandering off. And I wasn't the only one. We were all sleepwalking. Well, not all of us. There were a few of us that would just decide to sleepwalk off somewhere, and then they'd have to find us. And they didn't always find us. There's a room that has the evidence that I was there, because I put those tally marks on that door. There's a certain urban explorer that would like to know that. Anyway, when I realized all those dreams weren't dreams, and that some of the flashbacks I had at moments when my eyes were open and I was conversing with people, and I couldn't figure out why these memories were there because they didn't go with anything else. I would have remembered going to the place or leaving the place. It would have fit in with what was going on in my life. And nothing fit. It was just there all of a sudden. You know? Anyway, it was like when you pick up a piece of fabric, there's all kinds of bleach spots on it. And the flowered pattern doesn't touch, like a piece of calico or plaid. Right? Only most of it's bleached out except for weird blotchy spots of the original pattern, the textile pattern. That kind of area in my memory. And I've been remembering more and more since this happened. Anyway, I was dumbfounded. Like, I was a good kid in school. I never got in trouble with the police. I didn't get involved in gangs. I didn't do drugs. Oh, I played around with cigarettes until I realized That's how people die in burning buildings from smoke inhalation. I'll get into that one later. Because this is just your sneak peek, your preview. Remember I told you I was going to do something? This is your trailer. Slowly all the pieces began coming together like the parts of a certain robot in a kid's feature-length cartoon, name withheld for copyright reasons. Some of you'll know if you watched it with your kids, or if you watched it as a kid. Iron. Anyway. So all these things started coming back together, and I started making connections. And even though there's blank patches in between, I can pretty much gauge where those things happened by what happened while I was conscious and awake before and after. I've been able to associate a lot of them. And it gets more and more revealing as time goes by. So in 2014 and 2015, these memories picked up speed. And in 2014 and 15, it was because of a guy named J.C. Urquhart. That's not his real name. His real name is Rigo. I found that out by myself. You'll find out the rest of that story, that part of the story, in the weeks to come. Anyway, in 2017, because he told me some things. That's why. Thought I'd step back to that. So anyway, moving forward, in 2017, the engine finally slammed the train of cars into the caboose. The day Epstein got arrested. And that happened the morning after I stood in the court of the Most High and delivered my petition that those responsible for all the horrible experiences I had survived from 1982 until that moment be brought to justice. I quoted several scriptures about what happens to people that torment widows and orphans, and other scriptures that pertain to me and anybody else like me. And God said that morning while I was going to the bathroom, washing my face, brushing my teeth, you know what he said? Coffee was brewing. I heard him. I didn't see him, I heard him. The other half of my bathroom. He said, "It will be as you have said." Out loud. I heard it in the room. With these ears. Not my pineal gland. With my actual ears. It will be as you have said. And I said, it'll be as I've said what? I said a lot of things last night. You know? Time is irrelevant to God. I just finally had a minute where I could stop and address the issue, so I did. That's what I did. I went to his court and I addressed it. I petitioned him formally. And then I did my closing, and then that's what he said to me the next morning. It will be as you have said. I said a lot. And I didn't know yet. I hadn't put the pieces together. I hadn't connected Epstein's face with his name. Even though he had been pursuing me and popping up and stalking me in Virginia and Chicago and Utah and California. All through the years. After several moves, 2 marriages and divorces, and a complete legal name change, this man still found me. And I would like certain people that know, because I know that I was part of certain operations, even though I wasn't compensated and I wasn't informed about it, and I was used like bait. You didn't even provide me with college tuition. You schmucks. Or I should say your predecessors. Because now we've got Gen Z and the millennials moving into those slots, don't we? most of the people that were boomers and running the show when I was in high school and underage, I might add, have retired. But you know damn well who I am and what you did to me. And I am still a patriot, and I still believe in my country. I've served my country, just not the way I thought I was going to serve my country, military service. But I served you, and I wasn't even a badge. I'm not even on the farm. I was on the farm, but I wasn't on the farm. You know what I mean? They used me. A good American citizen. Not a mark on me. Not anything. No rap sheet to speak of. And you used me like that. Anyway, let's get back on track. So he said, "It will be as you have said." And I went in and I got my coffee. And I sat down. And I turned on the news. Like I like to do, or I used to like to do every morning with my coffee. And that's when they announced Epstein's arrest. 2017. And I was just dumbstruck. Anyway, it has been one criminal, one corrupt person at a time getting busted. That had to do with what was done to me. And I wasn't the only one they did it to. There was a whole little cluster of us. A lot of us ended up dead in ditches, out in fields, in rivers, ponds, reservoirs. And then they would tell their parents that they had run away and were on drugs. Well, they were on drugs, but they didn't run away. They went to a party. They slept over at a friend's. The friend was connected to somebody. Yeah. They were lucky, though. They didn't have parents like mine. Parents that would take money to pay off debts and sell us. No, that was just me. An American citizen. Not a kid in a third world country. An American citizen in the Mormon Empire, Utah. I got sold. It's such a travesty that Mar-a-Lago, moving along here, built by the post-heiress for women's equality, should be the site of such wretched cruelty to my person when I was 15. And I used to love all the old-fashioned not chauvinist, chivalrous things like opening a door for you and rescuing the princess and all that crap. It used to be quite the romantic. I used to like all the old-fashioned stuff. I don't anymore. Because I've come to feel like it's just very few people get that, especially women. And it's a way so that men can have what they want. It's a way to bait the hook and get that hook in your mouth, you know? But again, I'm getting off track. So, the footage that they show of Trump and Epstein standing next to each other with Ghislaine mischievously looking sideways behind them, that footage that they show, standing next to each other talking, I can tell you what they said. Because I was there. Here's them, and as the camera panned around, you saw those girls with the big hair. I'm just to the left of that. And at first they kept showing me standing there dancing. You know, the little Trump dance that he does during his campaign, or did during his campaign. He still does it, but not as much, because he knows I'm mad at him. That's him mocking me. Because that's how I was dancing while I was on ketamine still. And there was music playing, but nobody was dancing but me. Just dancing there by myself in this little sort of a living room lobby area. Anyway, well, they don't when they don't cut that scene short, to the left of the big-haired girls, as I wrote, giggling, you see me with my limp hairdo, because I didn't have a perm at the time. And it was the 80s, and you're supposed to have big hair in the 80s, remember? That's how you can tell that's not 1992, that's 1982. Just like the picture with Prince Andrew is 1982, and that's my black suede wristwatch on my wrist with my veins showing there on the back of my arm. As my hips. That wristwatch had a square, actually a rectangular face, and I picked it when I was 5. The reason the royal family was asking right before the Queen died about that picture was because Prince Andrew suddenly remembered that the girl he was with was not a blonde, and she wasn't that tall, because she was me. And I'm 5'5", have been since I was 12. That was me. That was before Prince Andrew was married. And they CG'd Virginia Giuffre's face and neck onto my body, but she's taller, so they had to make that accurate, but then they forgot that the body would be too far down. Look closer, her neck is too long. And her skin on her face doesn't match the skin on my arms and right here, because I'm a quarter Cherokee, and in the summer, I get pretty peachy. I got a fly buzzing me, so, you know, life's not perfect. Anyway, now I realize, that he was mocking me, like I said. Because I was doing that as I turned to those big-haired girls next to me and asked why those 2 guys thought I didn't know where I was. Because what Donald said to Epstein while I was dancing by myself and heard them clearly was Trump looking at Epstein and saying, "You know what I like best about it? She doesn't know where she is." And Epstein laughed. But this is after the deed happened. Okay? Let me rewind a little bit here. Oh, wait. First, let me tell you that I answered not directly to him, but I turned to those girls like I was going to say, and I said, "I know where we are. We're at a party." That's why those girls were laughing. Yeah. So earlier, before this little chit-chat between Epstein and Trump, and me answering stupidly, because I thought it was a dream, too. I really did. All those little white wispies. Anybody that's been put on ketamine or abused it, used it recreationally, which I have never done, would know that it's like when you're in the swimming pool and you open your eyes, you get those little wispy white, little cloudy bits where there's too much chlorine. That's what it looks like when you open your eyes. Everything's all misty and dreamlike. So, anyway, earlier Trump and I were in a bedroom somewhere. I'm assuming a hotel. Or maybe the other side of the Mar-a-Lago complex. I'm not sure. And he enjoyed using me as I slipped in and out of semi-consciousness, because you're not really quite awake when your eyes are open when you're on that. And remember, they kept redosing me. So he asked about what I was taking in school, because I opened my eyes like, "Oh, you're awake." I wasn't, but I looked like I was. He asked me, "What are you taking in school?" And I told him, thinking this was a dream, after asking, "Are you my husband?" Because why else would I be having sex? Maybe I was dreaming about being married. That's what I was thinking in my head. My drug-addled head. Anyway, I said French-German debate drama, because that's what I was taking. He said, "Oh, interesting. And where do you go to school?" And I said, "Orm High." This visibly startled him. He said, "How old are you?" Right? That kind of a face. I can't do Donald. I'm not Donald, but he did that kind of a sound. And I said, "I'm 15. He couldn't get off the bed fast enough. Backed up this way off of me, right? Anyway, I blacked out again, only to wake to his agonized blubbering, "Please, please, God. I didn't know. I've been set up. It's all rigged. If you keep me out of trouble for this, I'll make sure she goes to the best schools and has the best clothes. I'll treat her like my own kids, and she'll have any car she wants when she's 16. I'll pay for her college." It's funny because the FBI didn't pay for my college. The CIA didn't pay for my college. They just put me back into my regular life. Didn't make sure I had a career, a job, nothing. Nothing. Not one fucking penny. Nothing. And they kept using me. That's why my parents put me in their private school that I found out never got registered or trademarked or anything, even though we would hold corporate meetings as a family. He pretended like all that happened. He got enough money for that. Yeah, anyway. Just please, please, let's go on with Donald's begging. Please don't let them ruin my future with this. Please, God. His future. He's worried about his future. I really wanted to sleep, so I said, "God, help him so he'll shut up. Help this guy so he'll shut up," I think was the exact wording. Forgetting who he was even, because I had blacked out and I was having my ears railed on by this guy, right? Didn't even realize it was the same person at the time. Thought it was another part of another dream. Really. So I just said, "God help him so he'll shut up." And I'm thinking, it doesn't really matter, it's a dream, but, maybe, hey, why not? So anyway, not realizing that I was still in that bed and that the prayer was about me and that I was underage and that now he might be in trouble. Blackmail, all kinds of things. And then I woke up to the cool night air hitting my face as I was helped out of a car into a standing position and saw the night display of that walkway at Mar-a-Lago. That crescent shape, it's all glowy and golden yellow light at night through the arches, that little causeway thing. It's kind of crescent shaped. Got a little pond with a fountain, I think. Anyway, I just remember that after seeing it when they're talking about Mar-a-Lago and Epstein and Maxwell and Trump and, after they arrested Epstein, all these people, all these names were coming up. That was one of them, and then they talked about that. And I was like, I think I've seen that before. And I had to sit there and think about it, And I remembered. A few minutes later, I remembered. I was like, oh my goodness. And everything, like, all those cars connected on the train. Click, click, click. Ta-da. Anyway, I remember saying something like, "How pretty," back then in 82 when I was drugged up. And then I walked in and there was the dance music and I was the only one dancing and everybody's drinking drinks and eating little snacky things. Not sure what they were. Anyway, that footage inside at the party was the end of that little Epstein-Maxwell project. And then they took me to another one and another one and another one. And it was always like that. I would black out and they would take me off somewhere. And they would, if they noticed that I was being a little too aware and a little too coordinated, they would dose me up again. Anyway, there's so much more than this, but you'll have to follow me on Patreon because I'm not monetized here yet, and you're going to pay. Certain people are going to want to check up on this. I'm not talking about the general public, but certain people that want to see what I'm saying, you're going to have to pay me because you didn't pay me back then. And there's another place where I'm going to do a blog. I'll announce that later. But that is why the Donald is going through all this. God told me. And I had forgotten most of it. Even after the repeated clips being played of that Mar-a-Lago party with Epstein's arrest, 2017, 2018, 2019. And I asked God in 2020 if Trump would win re-election. Even though I wasn't happy with him for what I remembered, I was like, well, that was way back then. He didn't do anything since then. You know, the other allegations hadn't come up. And I'm pretty good at forgiving people usually. But God answered me no. And I was really disappointed because I don't like some of the things that the Democrat Party wants to do. But I have to say that some of what they've done has been good. But that's why I vote independent. Because neither party is consistently pro-Constitution and pro-U.S. They're not really representing us all the time. They're representing themselves. That's not okay. If you're representing the citizen rulers, you're supposed to represent them all the time. You work for us. There's a reason the founders set this up, because of what they'd seen in other countries in Europe. So that people could come here and be treated like people and have respect and dignity and have a fair chance at life. And there wouldn't be this caste system or class system that keeps you down since birth, no matter what. Anyway, when I asked God, is Trump going to win? Because everybody's like, who's going to win? And I was asking all these psychics to predict it. Well, I'm psychic too, but I don't do it, I think, professionally. I don't do it for a number of reasons. One of them is I like being private. Another one, I don't like people saying and doing what they do when you try and help. You're going to ask me from now on. Because something recently I tried to help with, I didn't like the nonsense that happened. This is why I just sit and watch the news all the time. Because I also can tell by the way it's going. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So anyway, when God said no, I said, what? Why? Because he broke his promise he made to me regarding you. And I really could not remember this. I spent the next 3 months asking God, promise? What did he promise? What did Mr. Trump promise you regarding me? What did he promise? No answer. It's like God was waiting for me to remember. I had to keep asking almost daily before he finally made me remember. He said, remember Mar-a-Lago. Remember before the party. He made me remember all that. And I went, oh, yeah, he did promise something. I mean, it took till probably, was it March, April, May, maybe? Can't remember when he said that. When God told me no, he wouldn't win. I can't remember if it was February or March. So 3 months after that. Maybe April, May, June. I don't know. Sometime in the first half of the year in 2020. Anyway, Jews will remember the story of Job, where it's finally revealed that the reason for Job's suffering wasn't because God was testing him, because the devil wanted him to, because that's not how God operates. They dropped this out of the King James Bible because they were anti-Semitic, remember, in medieval Europe. But in the original story, and I read this myself, I didn't start out there, remember? I was raised in Utah. Found this out later. Anyway, Job's suffering was because he had neglected to use his clout in the Amalekite society to speak up for the Israelites. And he was pretty high standing. He was in the king's circle of friends. And he didn't speak up for them when all they wanted to do was cut through the edge of that country to get to their inherited land that everybody knew was theirs. Because Abraham had bought that land. And over there in the Mediterranean area, at least that side of it, they respect inherited lands. That's something you don't mess with. Anyway, this led to Job's trials of suffering and to the king going to Balaam, the prophet, whose talking donkey stopped him on the way, and to Balaam blessing the Israelites instead of cursing them. And maybe the Christians will remember what happened to Jonah being swallowed by the whale when he wouldn't go prophesy to the people that if they didn't repent, they would be destroyed. He tried to get on a boat and leave where he was because he thought that, I'll just leave and then God won't know I've left. He didn't really understand the concept of God. Or the nature of God, I should say, because God is a lot more than a concept. I would know. I'm not the only one. Just because you might not have, some of you, spoken with him or seen him, doesn't mean you can't. And it doesn't mean that there aren't others besides me that have. God is no respecter of persons. He went to Hagar and told her to go back with her infant son Ishmael. Remember? Before he spoke to Abraham and Sarah. It's not about rank. It's about who he needs to talk to when. Who he feels like talking to when. He makes his own decisions. Anyway, and we're all his children. So, perhaps what happened to Peter after he denied knowing Jesus 3 times will strike a chord with Donald. Donald John Trump did this to himself by making a promise to God and then walking away from it. And God gave him quite a few years. 1982 to now, that's like 4 decades. 4 decades or so of time that he's had to keep his promise to God regarding me. To make up for what he did to me. Even though he didn't mean to. I mean, what was he doing with a hooker? If I had been a hooker, right? Or a 15-year-old drugged up to the point where she thinks she's dreaming and still asleep in her bed. What was he doing cheating on his wife? Forget Marla Maples. Forget Stormy Daniels. Oh no, wait, don't forget Stormy Daniels. Right, Eric Cohen? You went and found somebody that had my face structure? I don't know. Let's see. Does this ring any bells? Cohen? How about you, Donald? Does that face say anything to you? Or maybe this face? Or how about that one? Huh? How about that face? Does that make you remember anything? Or how about, that face? Especially that hairstyle, because that's one that Stormy Daniels was wearing then and even recently. She's a little bit older than me, not much. How about that one? That face look familiar? Or that face? How about that one? Or, I don't know. How about that one? That might look kind of like me on the pillow. Or, here's me, kind of that time frame. Because those are all college pictures. Business college pictures. How about that? That's about that 14, 15 year. Right? I looked a lot like that. Or maybe, I don't know. Or I accidentally snapped a picture of my own face. Anyway. God's tired of waiting, Donald. He told me I had to tell you this. No prophet or prophetess wants to do this kind of thing. We don't like giving these kind of messages. But it's our task. And I have other messages I have to give to people. Not the same nature. But I also have things to discuss with people. Maybe a midrash, Bible study kind of thing, but comparing it to current events or events on the timeline. But at any rate, God is tired of waiting, Donald. The only way to make this stop is to make amends with him. You need to make some kind of arrangement. I really, truly don't know how you can do any of those things you promised way back in 1982 when I was 15, because I've graduated high school. Even though it was my parents' private school, I have a diploma from them. And then to get into college, I had to go take my GED as well. And I went to several business colleges, and I even went to a 4-year college and had to drop out because of something that happened that, didn't expect to happen. But you'll have to see that on Patreon. Anyway, are you going to buy me a car? Clothes? Send me to college? I'm over 50 now. I'm a grandmother. You waited a really long time. And I've suggested you could make me a running mate. And I'm not looking for a romantic connection, and I'm not enamored of you. At any rate, Mr. Trump, I am not doing this to you. I am not doing this to you. God is. God is doing this to you. I'm not going to let you falsely accuse me of it. I don't even have that kind of clout. I'm just trying to live my life. And you and a certain evil relative of mine and her children have been doing things to keep me from accomplishing things. Right as I'm about to grab that brass ring over and over again until I'm really tired now. And she tells them I'm not going to go into that. Anyway, will you wait until you're completely ruined before you do anything? You better make it right, sir. Anyway, one more picture, Donald. Do you remember this little girl? Because we met actually when I was that age. And that's the man I thought was my father, but it's not my father. I found out in December 2021 when you had Joan Cara go after my real father. So you always knew. You could have just sent me a post-it note, Donald, and said, this is your father. But you decided to go after him and not keep me in the loop because you wanted campaign money for 2020. Actually, 2024. You wanted campaign money for this year. What, you help her and then she helps you? Because Joan Cara is not my mother. Joanne Cardish was my mother. And this, I think I might have even been wearing the same dress or one like it. Some Illuminati thing or Mormon thing or something where they were trying to get us to fall in love and get married. Remember that? I was like 4 years old. I think it's ridiculous. I don't blame you as a 17-year-old guy not wanting to hook up. But it's not the first time you've been mean to me. Then you went and got your baseball glove. And I watched you go down in the basement. I followed you. I was like, what's he doing? He told me not to touch his baseball glove after your mother took me in your room and tried to get us to play together. And you weren't having any of it because you didn't want to babysit me. I don't blame you. It was a ridiculous stretch of age between us. And I remember going down the stairs to find you go out the back door. And you didn't see me looking through the window in the basement at you, take your glove and throw it down really hard on the ground. And then later, after I went back upstairs and just tried to find a book to look at or whatever, I was looking at bric-a-brac and trying to find something to do for the rest of the day. You came home that afternoon and she asked why your glove was on the ground. And you said that I had taken it and now it was dirty and you didn't want to touch it or some stupid thing. And do you know that that glove has sat there until recently? I saw it in an Urban Explorer, Mr. Trump. And that's what made me remember meeting you when I was this age. And you were 17. Or 16. I can't remember which. Even had your name Donald on the glove. And they talked about it being the former Trump house. Why? I don't understand why, you would burn me twice like that. Maybe you didn't know it was me? I mean, come on. I've legally changed my name. I recently sent you a birthday card. Supposedly sent by your son Eric, but we all know that it's not sent by any of your kids. It's part of your campaign. Anyway, this thing with Donald is just a tiny drop in the bucket of what has been done to me my whole life by various people. And the whole ketamine thing, there's a reason why that happened when I was in preschool and then again when I was in high school. A certain person likes to do the same thing. It's like a dog returning to its vomit to lick it up kind of a thing, like they say. I didn't feel like messing around with an egg and drying it for you to do movie magic. But it sat there for 88 days waiting for me to come back and find it. Only instead of green, it looked like yellow egg white. There are people out there that know. There are people that came to my job in California in 2006. In 2005, 2004. I was there for 2 years, working for a certain attorney in Cathedral City, California. Several kind of famous, important people showed up there. And you know why? Because they were all part of what was done to me when I was a teenager. And my real brother Jacob's bandmates came and sat down and discussed with me that they did not want to help Jacob because he was stealing lyrics from his sister. I didn't know they were talking to me about me. They were trying to hint at me. And I just couldn't fathom it. I hadn't untangled all the knots. There's so many puzzles to solve in this thing because of this person. And I survived all of it. So this is just a little preview. I actually use this just for shopping lists and keeping notes and adding things up and keeping track of things as I work on them. And then they go into a permanent file or record. Can't help it. 20 years as a legal secretary and then paralegal until I got burned out. Never got paid what I was promised when they recruited me for school. You know how that works. Well, some people do. Anyway, can see you just fine now. See myself just fine. I'll pretend I can see you. Anyway, follow me on Patreon. I think I'll announce there, or maybe in another video here, where the blog is, the typewritten thing. and expect to have corrections done because I scribbled down all these notes and I've got all these notes in the margin and I'm going to have to go back and forth. And there's a certain earthquake forecaster who thinks he has 17 pages written to him, and it's out of those 5 Mead notebooks, 5 of them, okay? Somebody ripped him out of there. And he thinks that the John in there is him, and it's not him. I went on 3 dates with him, and we went our separate ways. And when he said on one of his last lives on YouTube, or maybe it's a carryover from Patreon, because he does that too. No, I'm not copying you, John. He thinks that it's about him. It's about another John. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of them out there. Johns, Michaels. Those are the 2 most popular guys' names. But he thinks it's about him. But when he said that he and Lauren met somebody, and she said, oh yeah, and her hair was dyed blonde, I'm guessing. I don't dye my hair blonde. I did it once for cosplay. To be funny and make a point. Everybody goes blonde. It's silly. Natural blondes really should be the only people that are blonde. Why does everybody want to do that? Anyway, when he said that, she said, oh yeah, me and Steven, I went, you talked to my daughter. I've never been with a Steven. Dude, you didn't bump into me trying to look like Lauren. You bumped into my daughter who looks like me. You're a moron. I don't think about you that much. I really don't. You have to bring it up. Or you have to post a video. And I do appreciate the earthquake forecasting, but you didn't come up with it. I told you about that on a date. I'll look up the guy again. 1953, and he got shamed out of his profession because of it. You didn't discover it. You didn't invent it. You didn't think of it. I told you about it, and then you rediscovered it. Whatever. I wish you the best. I hardly know you. But quit doing that panic-causing thing with the spikes, because you can't even see what you're looking at there. You want to try and gauge where it is on the map, you have to like wait till you shrink it down. It's really, you can't see past all the freaking circles. So, whatever. Anyway. There's a lot to tell you. And regarding this thing with the presidential debate, I already told you, Donald, what I think would be good. I know I'm not a lower-ranking Republican. I vote independent. I only joined because you kept spamming me. And I thought, why not? I'll do it this year. And then I let it lapse. You even sent me a gold card. And then I joined again with a very minimal donation so I could be nominated, and they didn't want to nominate me. I don't blame them. They don't know me. But I'll tell you, that would make up for it. I told you what I would consider forgiveness, and whether that would be what God would consider after all that you promised and then you didn't do any of it. I mean, you're going to have to figure it out, Mr. Trump. And to the rest of you, do not make a promise to the Most High God and then walk away from it. Not advisable. Couldn't recommend. Have a good evening. Shabbat Shalom to those of you that know. And everybody have a good weekend. Lila Tov.